In the end, it was just the living and the dead. Those who remained in the world of Project Zomboid learned that the zombie apocalypse was only the beginning of their troubles. Jax stumbled into Louisville, a once bustling city, now turned graveyard, carrying nothing but the remnants of hope, rags on his back, and a crooked baseball bat. He was a survivor, but with every passing day, the odds grew slimmer. After reading rumors about a new mutations mod that had infiltrated the game, Jax felt a rush of anxiety pulse through him. This mod promised to bring terrifying new threats to an already harrowing existence. Increased difficulty was an understatement. Determined not to succumb to despair, Jax set out for a nearby convenience store, hoping to scavenge supplies and find a location for a new base. As he entered the store, the familiar sound of glass crunching beneath his sneakers filled the quiet air. He moved cautiously, scanning the dimly lit aisles for supplies. Suddenly, he heard a low, guttural growl emanating from one of the chilled food sections. His heart raced as the sound grew louder, and before he could react, a figure staggered into view, one of the new mutated zombies. This wasn't just a reanimated corpse, its skin was mottled and grossly swollen, veining with a dark green hue. It was clear that this creature had been altered by some unseen force, a twisted fusion of different horrors. Jax clenched his bat, feeling the weight of his fears. For a moment, he froze, calculating his options: fight, flee, or freeze. The zombie's attention snapped to him, its mouth twisting into a grotesque snarl. Adrenaline surged through Jax's body, prompting him to swing the bat instinctively. The impact produced a sickening crack as he connected with its skull, sending it crumpling to the ground. He exhaled deeply, the encounter spurring his urgency. He scoured the aisles, stuffing supplies into his backpack: canned food, bottled water, and a first aid kit before bolting through the exit. Outside, the eerie quiet set him on edge. Like every other survivor, he was wary of attracting attention. The route to a proposed base was fraught with peril, a truth Jax faced head-on. He initially aimed for an abandoned hardware store he'd passed weeks earlier, hoping to fortify it against incursion. Crouching behind a dilapidated wall, he saw the hardware store loomed before him, a potentially safe haven. Yet, as he approached, Jax's heart sank. The entrance was swarming with mutated zombies, grotesque beings that made his previous encounter seem almost quaint. He had heard whispers among other survivors of the mutations inspired by games like Left 4 Dead and The Last of Us, runners, bloaters, clickers, and more. These entities were more strategic, more brutal. He crouched, observing from a distance. An unsettling sight unfolded. A bloater lumbered forward, swollen and seemingly impervious to damage. Jax felt a shiver. If he engaged that thing, who knew how many others would come pouring out of the store? Suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed in the air, making his skin crawl. One of the clickers had sensed a survivor nearby, drawing its brethren forth. The bloaters and clickers moved as if choreographed, functioning in tandem, making the surviving human no more than prey. In that moment, survival took precedence over ambition. Changing his mind, Jax knew he had to find a safer place, a small, isolated house further up the street. he devised a plan, deciding he'd take a long route, avoiding the major threats in the store, and would disable any source of noise as he went. As he cautiously moved along the street, quiet enveloped him until a rustle broke the silence. Jax turned to find a fellow survivor, a stout woman named Hopper, slinking from the shadows. "Thought I was the only one left," she said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Looks like we're both in it together now," Jax replied, relief surging through him. "Those things aren't just zombies, they're nightmares." "Tell me about it," Hopper said, eyeing the hardware store. "We'll be sitting ducks in there with this new breed. I heard something about runners and bloaters. I'd rather wrestle with the undead than face whatever changes they've made. But we have to secure a base." Jax nodded, formulating a plan with her. Together, they would head for the isolated house and secure it, but there was always the risk of running into patrols of mutant zombies. They scavenged fabric and supplies to create traps along the pathway, lungs heavy with the weight of caution. The walk to the house proved fraught, shadows loomed more threatening than ever as the sun set behind them. Somewhere in the distance, the unmistakable sounds of a bloater echoed. Whatever monsters lurked under every starry sky had indeed become worse. Finally, they reached the small one-story house. It had seen better days, but it showed promise. Both entered cautiously, barricading the door behind them. With nails and wood they had scavenged, they erected makeshift barricades to ward off any unwanted visitors. As darkness fell, their work continued. They fashioned barricades, fashioned rooms for sleeping, and organized their supplies. The quiet was unnerving, and Jax couldn't shake the feeling that even here, the mutations could invade. Disorientation set in as fatigue racked their bodies. Jax and Hopper took turns keeping watch. During the first watch, whispers of memories filled his mind, days untouched by unease, with friends and laughter now left haunted echoes. But memories faded as shadows danced on the walls. The squealing of a runner broke through the stillness, followed by the collapse of something moving outside. Heart racing, they whipped their heads toward the source. "No. They've found us," Hopper whispered, panic seeping into her voice. Jax held his bat tightly, the wood gritty under his fingertips. "We hold our ground," he muttered, his resolve hardening. Nowhere to run. With the night white hot with impending danger, the two stood ready, unwilling to fall to whatever had risen. Their journey had only just begun, and the horrors were far from over. But with resolve and each other, they felt the fleeting thread of hope tie them to survival. As the creatures grew closer, so did their fierceness to fight what had once been human, and now stood as an aberration above their hopes. The battle for existence raged on in a world where even the dead had mutated. Aligning against the chaos of mutation, Jax and Hopper prepared for what was to come, for in a realm forged by nightmares, the greatest weapon they had was each other.